Hi there, this is Kairi from Estonia joining in the HTMA online collective. I am so sure you're very interested in finding new ways to improve your well-being and that you have already found what you want to proceed with. I'm very happy that I can share with you some of the very interesting ideas about how to improve your well-being that I have learned over the 12 years on mineral balancing. When I first started out this journey, I just wanted some energy. But my first practitioner told me that, well, Kairi, we have to work on those autonomic imbalances first. I said, like, what is autonomic imbalance? Just give me something so that I could stand up for more than 1 hour and a half, which was my limit at those days. Later on, well, I was so deep in survival mode that I didn't have energy to absorb much in the beginning. But later on, I realized that autonomic imbalances is all there is, and we really need to look carefully into them. And over the years, I have studied quite a bit about our autonomic nervous system, and I expanded the mineral balancing programs, taking into account the needs of our nervous system on a deeper level. So what is that I'm talking about, and what can make you feel so much better? Because when we deal with the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system directly, this can greatly speed up the recovery. Maybe you've heard that these days it takes longer than many years ago to start feeling better on a mineral balancing program. But I see in my clients, in some cases, the recoveries, or at least feeling like a normal human being with bustling energy again, can be fairly short period of time. It doesn't mean that it will work for everybody, but when you're ready for it, that your body is not in a very, very deep burnout, then the results can come in so much faster. If I had known that and I had listened carefully to what my first practitioner said about autonomic imbalances and have more energy, I probably would have progressed a lot faster. So why do we talk about the nervous system? Because the nervous system is what is guiding us. It is telling us what can we do, how much reserves we have, and can we at all use those reserves. It's possible that we have plenty of reserves, but our management system tells us not to use them. Well, in the autonomic nervous system, we have basically two parts. One of them is there to keep us alive. Actually, both are there to keep us alive, but the first of them is the fight or flight system. And this is the one that takes precedence. It's the most important because it keeps us alive from immediate dangers. When there is a bear attacking us, we cannot chill out. We have to run for our lives. We probably don't want to fight in that position. And when we are in this fight or flight mode, we cannot really produce good levels of energy. We can't digest food. There's not really much detoxification happening. All of those processes are discarded until we are somehow in a safe place. And when we get to a safe place, another part, like rest or digest or parasympathetic mode, should take over. So we can repair all the damage, we can go back to digesting food, we can go back to detoxifying, relaxing, enjoying ourselves, also learning, focusing on things. Many of us think that we learn better when we're in fight or flight, but actually it's not like that at all. We need to be in a healthy parasympathetic mode for this. But most people, when we look at hair analysis, they have a lot of sympathetic dominance. Yeah, you know, when most evident it's when potassium levels are low, but there are also other ways like 3 or 4 highs with a high NAK presenting this pattern. But oftentimes we have something that's called unhealthy parasympathetic mode. So this is where when we feel there is so much stress going on that we can't handle it, and then we just go into a freeze mode. In a freeze mode, some people are really frozen. You know, they can't get up. But others are what we call functional freeze. It means that we're able to do our daily tasks, but we really don't have energy. We lack motivation, and life feels like a bore with no joy in it. And you got aches and pains everywhere, and the systems in your body keep functioning less and less, and you are more tired and tired. And I realized that this freeze mode, we keep it very carefully. And it doesn't like to be like really poked. It doesn't want to have stimulating effects on it. It wants to be handled with care and love, with lots of care and love. And this is what we do on mineral balancing. We really learn to take care of our bodies. Most of the program is built up on that, taking good physical care of us. It may be somewhat mechanical, but we should learn the skills of taking care of us early in childhood. But what happens so often? Taking care of ourselves becomes something that's maybe laughed at, that's mocked at, that's frowned upon. Like when we go after 15 minutes after a meal to our parents and say we're hungry again. Or when we just had a cup of water, we need another one, and then they tell us, how can you be hungry? How can you want water? Or how can you need to go to the toilet again? You just went there. And all of those things, I'm sure they're very, very familiar to you, but maybe you have not put them into a frame and looked at them in this way. What do they do? They start disconnecting you from your body. Of course, there are these painful, traumatic events that disconnect ourselves from our body, but it's also those little nitty-gritty things that happen on a daily basis where our contact to our body and our needs is put under a question mark. And then we start thinking, maybe there's something wrong that I need those things. Maybe I shouldn't want them. I should do things so that mommy and daddy love me and take care of me. What happens if they don't want to take care of me when I open up my mouth and say all of those things? So we start detaching from ourselves. It is so common that by the time we're adults, taking good care of ourselves is so strange for us, and we don't do it anymore. We don't listen to our bodies anymore. How is it possible that, by the end of a long day, you discover you haven't eaten, you haven't had water, you are so hunched over, shoulders aching, you have a headache, your body is screaming, it's probably screaming, has been screaming on you for hours, but you haven't noticed. It's not familiar to you, and you still don't want to take action because the small child in your head is telling you, you can't do that. You'll lose love of others. And then what? And even if we do eat, how is it possible that we eat all of those foods that are basically junk, that are devoid of nutrients? How can we put those into our bodies at all? If we have a good contact with ourselves, our needs, then this should never happen. We should always be there, aware of our needs and fulfilling them. When we do that, is it even possible for deeper imbalances to develop? Is it even possible to have chronic disease in the end? Because chronic disease, it's not like acute disease that you go to bed healthy and you wake up completely debilitated. It's not this way. It builds slowly over time. But we are missing the cues of our bodies because we are not used to taking care of ourselves. We've been told so many times, you're not the center of the world. What do you think about yourself? And it goes on and on and on. And I remember how I met someone back from school I hadn't seen for 20 years. And I remember that it was university time. She had some problems with her hip already back then. And when I met her 20 years or so later, she was in a big limp. She was limping and in a lots of pain. And I said, I remember you had this already a long time ago. She said, yes, but I'm going to ignore it. I'm not letting my body have it. I'm doing it my way. It will not be destroying my life and not letting me be what I want to be. How is it possible we get to those places that we don't notice? As I think it's ringing bells by you're noticing some parts in your life where you are not present for yourself and why things start happening that you don't like. But these are just wake-up calls. So if we are there, if we are present, if we are in this really in healthy parasympathetic mode most of the time, then we can fulfill our needs. We can listen to our bodies. And we don't need to build up strategies of how to manage with this body without listening to it. And this takes me to what we call a calcium shell on HTMA. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you have it. Well, I didn't quite have it in the beginning, but I had very, very stressful times early on in the program, and then I developed it. Looking back, okay, I realized how out of touch I was with myself. I remember that when I started familiarizing myself with my body, with having this body, not just fulfilling the needs according to the program, but actually tuning into the body. And I realized that I am not in here at all. I was hovering above my right shoulder, somewhere there, trying to avoid contact with this body. When we do those things, we use certain patterns that show up in our hair that are not at all conducive for our health and well-being. But these are just survival mechanisms. So what I noticed that, well, I had a calcium shell and I thought, okay, now I'm taking Paramine, I'm eating all of my vegetables and I'm going to sauna and doing coffee enemas and it will all, chip down in no time. But that was not the case. But it doesn't mean that all of those things are not useful. They are. Let me tell you something. An average client of mine is a person who has been in the spiritual world, who's been taking care of themselves on a spiritual and emotional level for years. They have a whole repertoire of techniques that they're using, but there's still something not quite right. The physical body is still sending messages that, well, this is not working properly. And when they come to me and I teach them the more physical part of mineral balancing, then they see how beautifully these two start intertwining and how they start providing results that they were looking for, but they did not get before. So everything here, is a combination, the body and the mind, and it all intertwines into one. So when we have been discarding our needs, it's just not on emotional level, on a spiritual level, but it also manifests physically. And we need to take all of those parts on board if we really want to progress, if we really want to enjoy vitality and well-being on all levels in our life. So let's go back. These people, they come in, they start doing what is needed for the physical bodies, and they say like miracles are happening. Then the singer, I make miracles happen. I say, I just tell you how to take care of the system that you have here on a more profound level, and the system does it all by itself. But that is such a big surprise for many people. We live in a world where people are so detached from their bodies, they don't want to take care of those bodies. We like to live in the spiritual world, dream and be powerful in our minds, but we need also be powerful in the body too. And it often happens that these people, they have a calcium shell or some other form of detachment from their bodies. And I work also with quite a bit of female entrepreneurs, and for some reason, they also tend to have calcium shell very, very often. Like it's something that they put on to be able to manage the stress of a business world. But you don't need to be in business with a calcium shell on. I know it from personal experience, and I've seen that from clients how these shells they start, falling apart, and a deeper connection to yourself is revealed. And this can be sometimes very impressive and surprising for those people who've been working on the spiritual level for a long time, that through the body you can get access to what you have not been able to get access to before in your life. But let's go again back to that calcium shell and what that shell is. Because that is a shell of protection from stress when we can't handle it. And our nervous system provides that opportunity for us. Like I said, we have this fight or flight, and then we have rest and digest, and then we have the freeze mode, which is like the unhealthy parasympathetic mode. And that is actually given us not to feel extreme stress. Like when a bear comes and starts tearing you up alive, and you wouldn't feel every part of that awful process, you can disconnect from what is happening to you. But this is meant for extreme stress. But nowadays, people spend a lot of time in that freeze mode, even though we don't have extreme stress in our lives. The modern life is actually, it's fairly safe. Okay, well, we do have problems. We have to stand out for ourselves, but we can still say that modern life is fairly safe. So why do we keep falling into that freeze mode so often? I think it's also part of nutritional deficiencies and toxicities, and also unnatural lifestyle that pull us into that mode that should be guarded only for extreme cases so easily these days. So I said the body and mind, it's all a whole, and when one part is neglected seriously, and like it is neglected seriously these days, then the whole of it starts to suffer. There are one thing I also want to talk about. So many people come to me and telling me that Kairi, I am eating healthy. Why I don't get the results that I want? Well, I think eating healthy and eating for vitality are two quite different things. Because I was a healthy eater too, by all modern standards, when I was completely burned out. I only had 90 minutes of nervous energy in the morning, and then I was on all fours, literally on all fours. A healthy eater, yeah. I was working out, yeah. Working out, I was a runner, so I was putting my fight or flight mode to the test every day, yeah. Running like 50 kilometers every week, yeah. I thought I was doing such a great thing for my body, but actually I was burning myself out. So yeah, eating for vitality is different. This is what we do on a mineral balancing program. We eat for vitality. This is where things get really interesting, and our body is filled with nutrients that make the system produce more energy and detox, and help it also go into a healthy parasympathetic mode. Because when we don't really have the nutrients that are needed for the healthy parasympathetic mode, then how can we be there? We can do all of the tricks with our emotions, with all of the techniques, but when we don't have something to back it up on a physical level, it's difficult to stay there. So yeah, taking everything in board, but still, again, I like to have the focus on the nervous system first. But we can also focus on the nervous system through food and detoxification. But I like to provide my clients with different exercises that help us to go into the healthy parasympathetic mode, how to activate the vagus nerve that helps us to stay in that mode. Vagus nerve is something that doesn't activate like this. The fight or flight activates like this, the freeze mode activates like this, but the rest of that digest, this takes work and it takes time. Because when we have been living in the sympathetic dominance, in the Chinese medicine, it's the triple warmer that governs the fight or flight mode. And this is also the guardian of all of our habits. And when something has become a habit, then a triple warmer is like a fierce warrior keeping to those habits. So it is quite a bit of work to negotiate it, to let go of sympathetic dominance, to let us relax, let us breathe deeper, let us digest food, let us detoxify, let us just be and enjoy life. As but where did we get now? So we want to restore that place. But when we have a calcium shell all over us, and this is for women, it's common, but we see it in men as well. I think it takes quite a bit of estrogen to build the system up. Today, we can get the estrogen, from different foods and some toxins that are so often, seen high on our hair analysis, like copper or mercury. They can also provide estrogen-like effects in our body and help us, put up a calcium shell. And what I see most often when I start talking, especially ladies, because I would say 4 out of 5 of my clients is a lady. And when I start talking about where do the roots of the calcium shell go, then they usually early in the childhood. But we cannot put up a shell early in the childhood because all of this calcium and magnesium, there's often a shell made up of both of those are needed for our development to, grow up this body that we have. So it often comes later. And it often comes later, but when I talk to them, we go deeper and we go into childhood. Oftentimes, we find there's deep-seated pain from childhood. Many times, what I see, it's about the gender, where you're born. When you were born a girl, but so often, especially if you were firstborn, families are still expecting it would be a boy. It's so deep seated in our brain, in our culture. So, and when we feel like we are, what parents expect us, so we start putting on some sort of protective layer to handle that. And then the society shows us things, that we're not satisfied with, makes us fight, makes us show that we are someone that they want to be. And then again, the shell grows. We get less and less contact with ourselves. And there can also be all sorts of deep-seated physical trauma, sexual trauma that builds up the shell and doesn't let us enjoy life. So these come from trauma is something, it can be a big thing, but it can be so many small things also accumulating. When you are on a daily basis, you're told some really horrible things about how you look or behave, and that can also mantle to a shell that you want to protect yourself from those things, but you're also protecting yourself from vitality and all of the good things. So I see that in order to deal with the calcium shell, the focus on the nervous system is ever so important. But we also do everything else on the program that we can to support the physical body, because as I told you, it's impossible to dismantle those patterns when we don't have both parts on board. I've seen so many other different interesting patterns in my clients, but the calcium shell is one of the most interesting ones. Always like to dig deeper and see what's behind it. Another pattern that I see is high manganese levels. Like we're often told that it's the water supply, and the water supply gets more and more contaminated with manganese, especially because of the agricultural practices of these days. But not necessarily all family members who live in the same area have a high manganese level. So I started looking into it, but what is different in those people? And I'm gonna see that this is a mechanism of disconnecting, protecting yourself from pain. And it's natural. We're all built up in a manner that we want to pull away from pain and go after pleasure. This is this is the basic mechanism in the human in the human system. So that's also interesting. When someone has persistently high manganese levels, also look into the nervous system, or like every element actually has some sort of psychological effect behind it. And when we look at eliminating toxic metals, these also tell a story. Like if we want to avoid anger, then maybe our iron levels and perhaps also arsenic or cadmium levels can be like very low, because anger tends to be an emotion we don't want to identify ourselves with, because probably we have never seen really a healthy expression of anger in our lives. We've only seen those thunderstorms or what happens when people suppress it. But the healthy patterns, I'm teaching my clients the healthy patterns to go through. And this is something that oftentimes helps them to get their, first of all, their iron levels in the blood up if these have been low. And it also starts eliminating into the hair a little bit better. I'm so fascinated in, putting things together, listening to people, their stories, where they come from, and how this relates to what we see on the hair mineral analysis. And then, in addition to working on diet, detoxification, and lifestyle, I love the part where we go into the nervous system, we go deeper into the autonomic balances. We start doing different exercises. We do talking. Also, when I have also client meetings where I'm a practitioner of energy medicine, Reiki, and reflexology as well. So we can, on the bodily level, also find the different patterns to work with. I call them clarity sessions, so that we can really understand what is inhibiting us, what is holding ourselves back. It's so interesting to see how when you work on the nervous system, when you work on the body, how things start moving, how they start changing on the hair analysis too, how those long-term deep-seated patterns get dislodged, and vitality starts pouring out. Vitality and joy, and how all of this affects people. I think as time goes on, I'm so interested in learning and learning and learning and putting new things into practice and finding new ways how to speed up the recovery of vitality on the mineral balancing program. Because yeah, like I was told in the beginning, that these days it takes a long time and it keeps getting longer. But I see that when we add a focus on the nervous system, we add a focus on emotions, we add a focus on the stress patterns stored in our bodies, it can get so much faster. And this also, it enhances awareness of how we live, how our choices affect us. And brings about such a beautiful spiritual awakening and development in people. I love this part of my job, and I knew from the quite beginning that I need to add something to these programs, but I didn't know exactly what it was. But today I'm so confident that focusing on the nervous system, working on that is such a working on it on a deeper level is such a great addition to mineral balancing programs, and listening to people's stories and tying the emotions and the patterns all together. It can be of great help. As I told you in the beginning, I'm from Estonia, but I also speak English, and at times I have English speaking clients. And though my websites, everything is in Estonian, but you can find me on Facebook in English. I think it translates for you. I've authored also a book, it's Vitality Handbook, and I hope I will be able to put it into English and market it in English because it provides such useful information and knowledge about the journey as we can go through in growing our vitality and restoring true well-being. I've been so happy to be a part of the HTM Online Summit, and I hope these ideas will spark new ways of enhancing your well-being. And I will be ready to assist you who are willing to embark on a different type of balancing journey.